if we go down to Jennifer Flood, our collections manager, she can give us a little update of the exciting things that are going on there with the collection. Jen?
Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen.
Great, looks good. Yep, it's up. Thank you.
Okay. So I pulled this document to highlight what we've been hearing about earlier in the meeting about trying to expand our narrative through the enslaved. So again, we're looking at the Calvert family papers on loan to us. This is one example because we are trying to tell a more inclusive and complete narrative. So this image that you see is, I have not started, hold on. Sorry about that. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So this document is a bill that was sent to the executor of George Calvert's estate, who was his son, Charles Benedict. And it is requesting payment for a number of clothing items that had been purchased in June of 1837 by George Calvert, about 6 months prior to his death. Hold on a minute. The items were purchased by from Enoch Tucker, who was a merchant tailor whose store was located in downtown Washington between Gatsby's and Brown's hotels on the north side of Pennsylvania Avenue. So what you see here is an advertisement for Enoch Tucker's shop that was posted in the Daily Globe the same year that George Calvert made his purchases. So again, this was posted January 3rd of 1837. And then the two images are Gatsby's Hotel and the Brown's Hotel, which is, he was located right between there, which is basically down between the Capitol and then the president's house. So again, going back to the document we're talking about, we're using these to try and find as much information on the enslaved community and the individuals as we can at Riversdale. So this document is an example of that helps us. So you can see underlined in orange here, some of the items that were purchased, in addition to a blue cloth frock coat and some pants, were three green cloth coatees for servant Elias, servant William, and servant boy Thomas. And then servant boy Thomas also got matching green cloth pantaloons. So for those of you who may not know, public-facing servants or enslaved individuals who worked in the household, such as footmen or waiters, they wore suits called liveries. So the image here is an example from the historic New Orleans collection, just to give you an idea. So the term coatee is referring to this type of uniform coat or jacket, which was waist length at the front, and then it had the tails behind. So footmen, valets, coachmen, they were often clothed in livery since they were seen as reflections of the owner's wealth and the status that they had. So the livery coats were often ordered from high-end companies such as Enoch Tucker, from where George Calvert purchased the items for Riversdale. So again, on that receipt, we had three names. We had Elias, William, and Thomas. And these names next appear in the 1838 inventory that was taken after George Calvert's death. So this is, again, the following year. So Elias, the information we learned from this is the ages and the assigned valuation. So from the receipt we just saw, that receipt tells us these gentlemen were household servants. They weren't field servants. So now we know Elias was 23 in 1838. His valuation assigned was $700. William was 31 years old, also $700 value. And Thomas was just 15 years old at the time. And his value assigned was $500. So then we keep looking. And again, these documents that I'm showing are all items that are on loan to us from Matt Ray, a Calvert descendant. So it's, again, I really want to highlight how helpful it is when the Calvert family has been in sharing and we're able to kind of find out just these little clues are such a huge help in telling our story. So the next time Elias shows up is 5 years later. This is a day book that Charles Benedict kept from 1843. There are 2 mentions of Elias in this day book. The first one is April 1st, where we see cash for shoes for Elias. And those were $1.25. Then approximately 3 weeks later, on the 24th, it shows Elias was sold for $400. So while we can't be sure of the reason for this, we can see that on that same day, after the 5.5 pounds of butter to Gatsby, buy cash for jail fees. There were $2.70 in jail fees. So this is suggesting that maybe Elias had attempted to escape and was sold as a result. We don't find any mention of Elias after this yet. I'm not saying it's definitive, but we haven't seen his name any time past this. So, this slide is another image of a notebook of Charles Benedict Calvert's from 1852. So this is 9 years later, where he has written his valuation of Riversdale property. And on it is the name Tom, down towards the bottom, age 26. He is valued at $400 in this notebook. And we believe this is the young Thomas that was shown in the receipt, grown up. The next time we find a reference for Tom, unfortunately, is in 1857. On May 27th, 1857, there was a newspaper article that described a fatal railroad accident, quote, by which a Negro man of Mr. Calvert's was killed and a free colored woman seriously, if not fatally, injured. In addition to this article, we found 4 more about the same accident. So with this information, because there's no name attached to the gentleman, I went back to another day book of Charles Benedict's. So on May 23rd, 1857, CB writes, Tom killed this day by cars, which was an early expression for a train. And then the next day after that is entered cash found on Tom, $4.15. So going back through earlier entries in this day book in particular, it shows Tom giving Calvert cash for the sale of flowers and vegetables periodically, like throughout the day book, he appears numerous times. So it appears that Tom had been driving these vegetables and flowers and items to market and was on his way home when the accident happened. So at the time of his death, Tom was 31 years old. So again, I just pulled this document to kind of, again, highlight how important these primary documents have been in putting names to some of the enslaved people who work here, and the work we're trying to do in the workforce exhibit to try and expand our narrative. So it's exciting. And again, this is also kudos to all our transcription volunteers who are making this possible as we go through these 7,000 documents on loan and scanning them and all of it. So otherwise, collections news, we have in the works, as Maya mentioned, we will have the emancipation quilt going up on display soon. We also have had a donation offer of 6 Baltimore painted chairs. We do have some already in the collection, but the 6 that are being offered now are very close to one of the accessions of 4 chairs we have currently, which would make a near identical set of 10. And we know from the 1838 inventory that there were 24 black chairs here at Riversdale. And then from the 1876 auction catalog, after Charlotte Calvert's death, there were 10 ebony and black chairs. I know ebony and black's the same, but that's how it's listed. There were 10 here at Riversdale. So it would make a near identical 10, such as were still here in 1876. We have some additional black chairs in addition to those 4 that I mentioned. They're in need of conservation, and the ones that are being offered stylistically match better. They're in better shape. So that's in process now. We have also received recently a donation of some textiles from Joyce McDonald, who used to be the manager here at Riversdale, who worked here for years. She inherited a number of textiles from Susanna Yateman, who was the last resident of Bostwick. And the number of, these are all pre-Civil War textiles, a number of them dating right to, say, 1810 to 1850. So what we have accepted are a washcloth, 2 bolster pillowcases, 2 sheets, and a coverlet, with the intention that, again, as we develop our interpretation, we can use these items for our planned interpretation of Will Scott, one of the enslaved coachmen here at Riversdale. We're hoping to incorporate those items in that display. So that is the collections update.
Jen, thank you very much. And I must say, you must be great at crossword puzzles and also jigsaw puzzles, because putting these pieces together and go back and finding this information, piecing together, is, to me, quite exciting and very rewarding. And I just want to remind folks that this all occurred, or some of this has occurred, because of the generosity of the descendants. If you'll remember, about 9 years ago, I received a call from Matt Ray to say, I've got an old trunk that's, we're cleaning out my grandmother's house, and my father put it out for the trash to be picked up. And I think maybe you might be interested in this. And we certainly said we were. So you can imagine the delight of us when we found this this material with 7,000 documents, and spent over a year going through this 1 day a week to catalog and look through these documents. And also Mary Calvert Conger, who recently, or about a year ago, passed away, was very gracious in donating the sale catalog from McAlpin, which also helped us relate some of these purchases as the time moves on through family and generations. So again, I appreciate all of the family contributions, and also the thoughts of telling the family story here. It really adds to the to Riversdale. I've always said that, you know, we're not a house, we're a home, because we truly have the story of the people that live there. So Jen, anything else that you want to add?
No, that's again, like you mentioned, it is a puzzle, but it's a fascinating puzzle. And as we, again, with this transcription project, and it's allowed me to, again, really look at each document. When we were originally going through and cataloging the one day a week for a year, all of us, Howard and Ann and Patrick, you have to just do such a cursory scan and get the information down without really spending time with each document. So now going back and spending each time, that's what now is when I'm able to kind of really find, oh, there's William, there's Servant William, and there's Elias, and go back through and put it all together. So it's fascinating.
We're greatly appreciative of all that. So any other questions for Jen or anything that was discussed today?
So I'd like to ask Jen, why is it that the probate documents of George Calvert showing his purchases of clothing just before he died that he hadn't yet paid for, why are they in private hands? Shouldn't those be in a public repository?
Well, again, it's just like your personal items. You know, your descendants inherit them, and then they get stored somewhere and tucked up in the attic, and they may get forgotten, and then it loses the connection. So again, these documents say we can trace the line where George Calvert, then Charles Benedict inherited them, then it went to his son George Henry Calvert, and it goes down that way, and you just kind of, it's all in a big trunk, and it just got passed down. So,
Well, what I'm thinking is, if these documents exist in private hands, they may not be exclusive copies. There should be public copies of probate records.
Some of the information there is. Yeah, some of the information is, I mean, like the 1838 inventory, we
Right.
had the majority of that information, but what we found in this trunk was the original notebook that the gentleman seems to have walked around the house. And from this document is what he submitted to the court. So there's additional information in the 1838 book we have that was not submitted. So some information, yes, it's kind of not redundant, but it backs up what we found online. But there's a huge amount of information that is not publicly known. So it's wonderful that, you know, Matt Ray was willing to share it with us, and we're able to gather the information and use it. So
We're just very, very thankful for that information to be able to put this puzzle together. As we move forward, I'm sure that we will find more information and be able to share it and expand the stories there at Riversdale.